Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. The United States and Europe have historically been colonizers of other countries, and not just other countries. I'm pretty sure if you ask most Native Americans in America, Canada, if you ask most native-born Hawaiians how they feel, and they will probably tell you that they are still being colonized even today. So, the United States and Europe have colonized the global South, Africa, the Middle East, just you name it, any place that is outside of their territory, they have colonized. Well, today, colonization is, fading into history. So instead, what they're trying to do is become dictatorial to countries that they cannot colonize. And this is their biggest problem with Russia and China and Iran, that these countries refuse to be colonized, refuse to be dictated to. The West is dictatorial about economics, economic systems, cultural values, etc. Whether we agree with those values or not, it is not our place to dictate our values onto them. You can try to change a system by diplomatic means and social pressure, but using threats, sanctions, militarism, this just doesn't work. It has never worked. You can see it. Cuba, the entire Middle East. You look at how much this has been used, and it doesn't work. So recently, just a couple of days ago, maybe yesterday, Russia announced that they are withdrawing from 13 treaties with Europe. This is going to be, and China, a couple of years ago, withdrew from a trade agreement with Europe. Now, in the Western media, this is going to be portrayed as them being nationalistic and isolationist, and anything can be further from the truth than this. Russia and China, even Iran, the global South, they've all been trying to expand trade and diplomatic ties, etc. But if they don't bow down to the will of the West, then they are going to be punished in some way. Right this minute, the West is trying to pressure Africa, which has just been brutalized by the West. They're trying to pressure Africa against trade with Russia and China, and even on their energy policies for climate change. Never mind the fact that, a small fraction of global pollution comes from Africa. They want to pressure them to keep them from producing, using fossil fuels to expand their economy. By suppressing their ability to expand energy generation, which the vast majority of Africans have no access to energy or clean water. But they're going to pressure Africa, and Africa is not taking this lying down. In addition, Venezuela reached an agreement that the United States doesn't like at all. They have opened up, they have made such diplomatic advances with Colombia, which has been highly adversarial between the two for many years. They've made such diplomatic advancements that they have opened the border between Venezuela and Colombia. So this is all being rejected. All of the colonization, all of the dictatorial behavior from the West is being rejected. You know, like I said, for decades, Russia and China have been trying to expand trade and diplomatic ties, etc. And they reached a certain point before the West decided, no, you're becoming too powerful within yourselves. You're not bowing down to us. You've developed a functioning economy that doesn't depend on us entirely. So we're going to take steps to stop it. And it really doesn't matter how far they will go in those steps. But it's failing. Because Russia and China have gained functioning economies and they are trying to build more diplomatic ties and economic coalitions and trade agreements, well, they're inviting other countries in. The Middle East, the Global South, Africa, all of the countries that have been colonized by the West, all of the countries that are being dictated to by the West, and even those that are not so dictated to by the West, they are inviting them into the BRICS alliance, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. So what they've done and what they're doing and expanding on is building an alternative that these countries can turn to so that they are not economically crushed or militarily threatened by the West. But the West's military is stretched to the limit. The West's economy is stretched to the limit and can collapse at any given moment now. You know, it's probably not going to happen overnight, but it's a definite possibility in real terms. Yeah, when you've got $32 trillion in debt and deindustrialization, unemployment, etc., the West is falling apart, while the East and the Global South are rising at this point. As far as economics are concerned, Russia and China and the Global South are not a threat in any way to the West, except by competition. In fact, because of trade with these countries, all of these countries, the West has benefited greatly by inexpensive labor and manufacturing and so forth and so on, cheap gas, cheap oil. As far as militarism is concerned, they do not pose a threat to the West. Where Russia is concerned, I pointed out before that Russia has a population of 144 million, whereas all of Europe has a population of 330 million, and the United States 330 million. So you're talking over 1 billion, and if you combine all of Europe and the United States, Russia spends less than 25% on their military compared to NATO, and less than 8% what the United States spends. The United States spends at least 300% more than China does on their military. So what kind of a threat is that? When was the last time China invaded another country? And before Ukraine, which was preventable, when was the last time that Russia invaded another country? 1980s, but that was the USSR, which no longer exists, and that was brought about by the actions of the CIA. So that was a defensive movement. For several consecutive years prior to the Ukraine conflict, Russia had been decreasing the amount of money that they spent on their military, while we continued to increase year upon year upon year upon year. But things change because of all of the threats. Well, China has announced a fairly significant increase in their military spending this year, and Russia just announced that they are expanding their military to 1.5 million soldiers. Now, this is going to be portrayed in Western military as, that they're going to basically double the size of their military overnight, and that's not what's happening. The goal, that 1.5 million is a goal between now and 2026, and that is by conscription. I think they have about 800,000 in their military right now, so it's almost double. But the way that their military works is by conscription. They've had a set goal of how many people are in their military. You spend two years in the military, and if you spend 2 years in the military, that's really all training. Anybody that's ever been in the military in the United States can tell you that your first 2 years in the military are just becoming proficient in your role, because you've got basic training, then you've got your job training, and your military specialty, and then you go to a duty station where you're practicing these skills and learning to use them on an everyday basis. So you become proficient in it. By the end of 2 years, it takes 2 years for you to feel comfortable and truly proficient in what you are doing. And then at the end of the 2 years, you are released from active duty, but you are a reservist. So you can be recalled if circumstances warrant it. So they're not going to have all of these people suddenly flooding into the military all at once. This is going to be in cohorts. They're going to draw in, 100,000 people train them and release them, draw in the next 100,000, train them and release them, and so on, until they have 1.5 million in their military, most of which are, or at least half of which are reservists. They're not active duty. So this is going to get blown up in Western media, like I said. Anything that happens, anything Russia or China does, anything that Iran does, or Venezuela or Iran or anyone, is always going to get blown up in the media to make you afraid and convince you that we need to spend more money on our military, build more bombs, more bombers, more tanks, etc. And cover up for the fact that our military is falling apart. And our diplomatic ties are falling apart. Everything. If you do not have diplomacy, then yeah, you have to keep expanding your military until your whole society collapses trying to support the size of your military, even though your own people do not support this. The fact that American citizens do not support this is not only supported by polls, which illustrate that Americans are against the amount of money that we are spending on defense, the War Department, but it's also illustrated by the fact that for years now, the U.S. military has fallen short of recruitment goals. In some cases, 25% below recruitment goals for 2022. So younger people do not want any part of going into the military any longer and supporting the imperial goals of the U.S. government fighting for corporate profits and the power of a few elites. So colonialism is not only being rejected by other countries, it's being rejected from within this country. As well it should have been long ago. So all the colonialism, all the dictatorial policies of the West have failed. And it is bringing down the entire economy and the government structure, the social structure of the entire West. The industrial capacity, it's all gone. It's all just crashing and burning right now. And there is no turning this around without diplomacy, without accepting the fact that we are now living in a multipolar world. You either accept it and adapt to it, or you deal with the consequences. For now, our governments are just making you deal with the consequences. Those consequences are going to continue to get worse. There is no scenario where this gets better. Not as long as we continue on the path that we're on. Share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.